That's right, 2-8, 6-4. There are a few teams that haven't had their byes yet. Then in the AFC South, it's all losing records. Tied for first place, we got the 4-5 Colts, just slightly over the 4-5 Texans, owning the tiebreaker so far there. With the 3-6 Jags, one game out of first. My favorite sports talk guy, other than myself, at the Jonas Knox on Twitter, Jonas Knox, Fox Sports. He's my favorite guy. He picked the Jags to win that division this year or make the playoffs, one of the two, I can't remember. I picked the Jags to do fairly well as well. Not quite that ambitious, though. But there is plenty of opportunity left there for them, and even for the 2-7 Titans. Technically, they're only 2 games out of first. Crazy. And then in the AFC West, the 7-2 slumping loss 2 games in a row Denver Broncos, with now starting quarterback Brock Osweiler for this next week. Peyton Manning out with injury. 7-2. Kansas City Chiefs after them with 4-5. Oakland Raiders at 4-5. So again, alive for a wild card spot. Maybe not so much their division though. And then the San Diego Chargers at 2-7. Not really with anything to play for, other than a high draft choice if they can continue to lose. Then out in the NFC, we've got in the East, first place 5-5 New York Giants. They need to buy yet. We got 4-5 Redskins, 4-5 Eagles, and 2-7 Dallas Cowboys. So that division very much up for grabs. You wouldn't think the Cowboys would be in it though. However, with Romo coming back and the other three, very 500 average mediocre, at least according to their records, who's to say that the Cowboys couldn't make a run and run the table, be 9-7, or at 8-8 if nothing else, still win their division. Then in the NFC North, we've got maybe your first place Minnesota Vikings at 7-2, all alone at the top there, not tied with anybody for first. And behind them is the Green Bay Packers at 6-3. They have lost 3 in a row after starting out 6-3, or after starting out 6-0, they have lost 3 games in a row. Chicago Bears 4-5. They've won a couple in a row here now, 2 wins in a row. And the Detroit Lions 2-7. Carolina Panthers undefeated, the only undefeated team left in the NFC. They are on first place in the South at 9-0. Then we got the Atlanta Falcons, who just like the Packers started out 6-0 and then went on to lose 3 straight. I believe they're coming off their bye week, maybe. I don't remember. But, yeah, I think so. But anyway, they are 6-3, so right in there for a wild card spot, but falling out of contention for the division. And then you got the Bucks at 4-5 and the New Orleans Saints at 4-6. And then out west, we've got the 7-2 Cardinals firmly in first place. Behind them are the St. Louis Rams and Seattle Seahawks at 4-5, and the overachieving San Francisco 49ers at 3-6. All right, so that's it for most of the recap, or at least the league-wide recap in the NFL. However, more football to discuss yet. Going to be a good 2.5-hour show, if not a little more this week. You're welcome. Free of charge. But Vikings, I grade the film on the Vikings every week. As you know, if you're a regular listener, it is one of the most accurate, unbiased, spot-on accounts that you can get of the Vikings' performances. I'm not going to go through every single name and play and mark and anything like that, but I'm just going to kind of give you what I learned overall from watching the tape last week. First, let's start off with NFC Defensive Player of the Week, Terrence Newman. This 2 weeks in a row, the Vikings have the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. Last week it was Linval Joseph, now it's Terrence Newman. I never in a million years would have predicted Terrence Newman, of all people. He has had a terrible season despite what any bandwagon, purple sunglass wearing, purple Kool-Aid drinking butt kisser wants to tell you. Terrence Newman has not had a good year this year at all. In fact, he has been terrible more often than he's been good. And he almost hasn't been great at any point in time this season until last week, where he ended up with 7 pluses on my score sheet to go along with 5 minuses, mind you, which is pretty standard for him thus far this year. But still, he finished with a +2 ratio of plus to minus, which is really, really good. Also defensively, one that kind of shocked, or at least to public opinion, Anthony Barr was actually -2 in my grading of the film, with 2 pluses early on in the game and then nothing but 4 minuses after that. Then we had the D-line playing particularly well. Linval Joseph, he is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year right now. And if he keeps this up, he just might win it. He's an absolute beast. He's a one-man defense out there almost at times. And I have been very slow to get on the praise Linval Joseph bandwagon because I've seen so much from Sharif Floyd this year, who finally returned from his injury this last week. Not super impactful, but great to see him out there and playing significant minutes and snaps. But you see a lot from Griffin as well. You know, you got the schematics involved with Zimmer's play calling, with the blitzing, and Greenway and Barr and Kendricks and Harrison Smith. You know, so there's a big team element, and I didn't want to overpraise Linval like everyone else was doing, because he wasn't leaping off the film 4, 5, 6 weeks ago the way that people want to tell you he was. Like, he just started leaping off the film, like, where not only is he playing good, but he's playing amazing, he's playing fantastic, he's playing perfect, he's not making any mistakes, and he's making tons of impact, all on his own, you know? Not from a play calling standpoint or anything like that, or not from the guy, you know, who's supposed to be blocking him messed up. It's like, no, he's just that good. He's making plays. You know, he just started doing that within the last 3-4 weeks, really convincingly, or at least, you know, more convincingly, more consistently, and more so than anyone else on the defense, where other guys were more taking turns early on in the season with him doing that, I think, as well. Maybe it wasn't so much that he wasn't playing, you know, as good, even though he wasn't. You know, he's gotten better, that's fact. But I think other guys were playing better early on in the year that have kind of hit a little bit of a schneid. I'm not talking Xavier Rhodes at all. Quite the contrary. I think Rhodes is playing great. Captain Munnerlyn is and has been playing great. I'm talking Anthony Barr, Harrison Smith, Everson Griffin, B-Rob. These guys are just disappearing as of the last 4 games or so. Not being as good as you're being told they are, or maybe as you think they are. But anyway, on the D-line, Linval Joseph had 8 pluses to 0 minuses, a +8. I don't know that I've ever seen that from one player grading out, you know, at least not at that position, grading out film before. And then Everson Griffin had 3 pluses, no minuses. So overall on the defense, from a unit standpoint, the D-line played phenomenal. +10, 15 over 5. The linebackers were the worst. They were actually a -5 with a 3-to-8 ratio of good to bad. And then the defensive backs were a -1 with an 11-to-10 of good to bad. However, there were 2 penalties called in the secondary that I had to incorporate as well. But so overall, an exceptional game for the defensive line, we learn. A very good, solid game for the DBs, and then especially when you consider that 2 of those pluses for Terrence Newman are interceptions. You know, that gives them even extra points yet. So an exceptional game for the D-line, particularly Linval Joseph. A good to very good game for the secondary, and then a subpar, slightly below acceptable performance from the linebackers. Now that was to be expected with Kendrick still out with injury, Cole out with injury, Hodges inexplicably traded to San Francisco for an offensive lineman that we're never going to play, and a draft pick that's in the 6th round and we don't get to use until next spring. You know, so it was Barr and Greenway, and Greenway's playing middle linebacker last week instead of his natural, or this year at least, natural weak side linebacker. And then eventually you had the young man Watts coming in and seeing snaps as at linebacker as well. Ran a lot more nickel play coverage and calling, I think, as a result, or nickel packages. But then, I suppose finally too, then so there was your defensive overview. I'm telling you, that's what had. Those are the grades. That's how the outcome played out. And then your other impact on that was actually, I was surprised. Now, Mike Zimmer gets the coaching credit for the defensive schematics and then also for some general game management things when I'm grading. I was very surprised to see that Zimmer's responsibilities in the coaching, he actually turned in a -2 performance. Mike Zimmer did not coach a particularly exceptional game this last week, and we were very fortunate that Linval Joseph and the defensive line were so disruptive by winning their individual matchups on the line of scrimmage that it was able to offset and overcome those deficiencies in linebackers and the semi-subpar play calling on Zimmer's part. So there's your entire defensive overview. Let's get special teams out of the way quick. Special teams were a little bit of a concern outside of the touchdown return that Cordero Patterson had. Not referring very much to the 2 misses Walsh had, although that is a little concerning. Blair Walsh did miss 2 field goals. He did still, however, come out, +5, 7 goods to 2 bads. But he didn't. He's been getting more touchbacks on kickoffs too this year, and he didn't get very many of those as well. So, an average to sub-average game for Blair Walsh, but nothing to concern about. The special teams coverage teams in general, both on kickoff coverage, punt coverage, and then even some of the punt returns and kick returns, very spotty. A lot of things that could be and should be and need to be cleaned up. So that was something I'd like to see work on and get the special teams coaches in there. They were actually a +0, 6 good, 6 bad, 4 bad, 2 penalties. So not good numbers for the special teams units as a collective. Then we had, let's see, okay, so now that pretty much wraps up special teams. Finish out offense side of the ball quick. Keep the show moving. Too much left yet. So let's start out at the top with Norv Turner. Norv Turner coached an amazing game this last Sunday in Oakland. Phenomenal. I graded Norv Turner's play calling and coaching out at 16 pluses to 4 minuses, a +12 ratio coaching, play calling. That is almost unheard of, a near perfect game. So you had weak coaching, well, not weak coaching, but average to slightly below average coaching on defense that was overcome by exceptional play up front on the line of scrimmage defensively with your D-line. And then offensively, you had exceptional play calling and strategy and a great game plan. And, coincidentally, it was actually executed fairly well all the way around. Offensive line as a unit graded out particularly well. Individually, they did not necessarily grade out particularly well, but as a unit, they did grade out well. As a unit, they graded out +16. Individually, put together, they were like a -8. But again, when I'm singling out an offensive lineman, it's usually more for a mistake than something they do good. And then vice versa, they all do something good and do their job on the same play. It goes down in a plus for the offensive line column, but not usually in behind their individual names. Is kind of how I do that. It's complicated to really get an idea on the offensive line play. But overall, as a unit collectively, offensive line played extremely well, +16. Let's get to the individuals then on that. Khalil actually was the worst offensive lineman in the game, and that was probably the first time this has happened. He's had a really good year. He had no pluses at all to 4 minuses, 2 in each half. So a -4 ratio for him, unacceptable. Fusco was his typical terrible self, tied for the team lead with 6 minus plays in his blocking. However, he did have 5 pluses, which was nice to see from his side. That was rare. So and a penalty. So he ended up with a -2, better than Khalil's -4. Berger and Harris. Well, no. Let's go then to Clemmings. Clemmings then also was he was a